Hello, everybody. My name is Huib Schoots. I'm going to talk about testing in modern times. There's a poll. Please find it and fill it in. Only 11 questions to be answered with true or false. I know it heavily depends on context. Still, give it your best guess. This is me. I'm not going to talk about myself. Only the last thing on the slide is it's recent. I'm the singer of the Fairly Drunk Unicorns now, and we're going to perform at Agile Testing Days in 2 weeks. And I'm freaking nervous about that. So I'm going to talk about testing and quality just as an intro and software development, and then I'm going to talk about learning, testability, and learning in teams. So this is not really about testing. It's a lot about learning, and I think testing is learning. But before we start, please fill in the poll. I have the results here, so 16 people responded. 17? Come on, you can do it. You need the URL again? There it is. Oops. Don't do Outlook. There it is. Øredev, all small characters, 2022. 11 questions. And while I'm waiting for the answers, I could do a little dance, because I feel like Britney Spears with his headphone on, but I won't. Come on. You can do it. Well done. Okay, I'll start talking when we have 50 responses, okay? I learned something about deadlines, so this morning. So did 56, 7, only 3 more. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to go quickly through it. Quality means the best possible product we can build. Interesting. Almost 2/3 thinks that's not true. The goal of testing is finding bugs. 30% thinks that's what we do as testers. Testers are responsible for the quality of the product. I'm very happy with you guys. That's awesome. Testing is a phase in our software development process. Of course, it depends on how you look at it. We're going to talk about that. I think it's not a phase. I think it's a thing you do all the time. Testing is writing test cases and executing them. 30% is a bit old-fashioned. I think it's way more than that. But we're going to talk about that later. If the product conforms to requirements we can ship, 40% managers in the room. We do explicit risk analysis in our team. This is interesting, because if you're a tester, the first thing you learn is no risk, no test. And looking at people in the wild, they don't really do risk analysis, and it's such a shame. We can automate all testing, okay? It's a very modern audience, awesome. Test automation saves time and money. I have bad news for almost 83%. It doesn't, really. I know. We're going to talk about that later, but let me be very clear about this. I think it will only cost you money, but it will help you deliver faster. But it won't save you time. It probably will take you more time. But you can deliver faster. And we don't need dedicated testers. Okay, I think it depends. The performance of the team is determined by the way we organize ourselves. I'm going to talk about that, but I don't think that's true. Okay, let's do this. So, testing and quality. For me, in 2011, I invited Michael Bolton. He's somewhere in the room here. And he taught me and my team about rapid software testing. And before that, I had a lot of the same things that I put in this poll. I thought testing was like, okay, we create a plan, think about what we want to do, create test cases, execute them, and then we're done. And then I learned a lot about exploratory testing and a lot about learning. So for me, testing, the goal of testing is to inform decisions taken by others about quality and risks. And quality is value to people who matter. And it's quite simple. As soon as it's valuable, it has a certain quality. Quality is not conformance to requirements, although it's part of it. But I see many people still think like, hey, if we conform to requirements, then we're doing good. Well, not so sure. So just a simple example, look at your requirements and look if there's a statement about where the OK and cancel button should be. Just flip them around for once, just to have fun, see what happens. And there are many more hidden, tacit, non-explicit requirements in our software. And it's also not the best product possible. Just think of your car. I have a recent car. It's 1 year old, and it's not a Ferrari, so it doesn't go as fast as a Ferrari. It's not as good as a Rolls-Royce. It's not looking as good as a Lamborghini, but it's pretty okay. It brings me from A to B. It has awesome sound in it. It's electric, so it's good for the environment. For me, it's pretty good. 100% quality, but it's not the best car there is. So quality products solve the problem and are good enough. But how do you determine good enough? And that's what testers do. And that's what teams should do together with each other, with the customer, talk about what actually is valuable to the customer. So some quotes. James Bach said, testing is not about assuring conformance to requirements, it's rather understanding the requirements. I love requirements, but they're never complete. But they help me understand what the product should do and could do. If I look at a product, I rather play with the product, talk with others about the product, create my own model, what the product should be, and don't even look at the requirements, even when I start testing. I will look at them eventually, but I rather build my own model of the product before I look at requirements. And Uncle Bob said a professional tester takes responsibility for the requirements with intelligence, who tests not only the system, but also, and more importantly, the assumptions programmers and specifiers make. And I like to talk about assumptions a lot with my team. That's why I love risk analysis. On one hand, we have the people who solve problems, and on the other hand, there's types like me who always see problems and ask questions like, but what if this doesn't work? Or what if we lose this connection? What happens? Or how is error handling working in this area? And sometimes I see developers look at me like, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Thank you. And then we can continue. I will talk about that a little bit more. So value is in the eye of the beholder. It's not a number you can put on a product. So if you value it enough, you won't discuss the price. So value is perception from many people, from many different perspectives. And this is the fun in software development. How do you, because some of these values just are, how do you call that, in collision. It's one or the other, and we have to make a choice. Thank you. And it's developers want to make change fast, and ops people want to have as less change possible because they want a reliable product. Those are also not mutually exclusive. So value to our customers. A customer doesn't want to buy a product. It wants a solution like the car. Although it's a Tesla and it's pretty cool, I still want a solution to get from A to B in the most comforting way, and in a cheap way, and in a good way. So the customer value doesn't always can be expressed in monetary terms. Then let's talk about software development. For me, it's R&D. A lot of research and just a little bit of development. And I'm not saying that development is easy or just a small part, because it's a big part. But how do you know what to code? So it's important to do a lot of research. That's what we do. Because software is very complex. There are 100 functions, 1,000 other things, and millions of lines of code. Just go into your company and find the one single person who knows everything about the system. You probably won't find it. The organization I used to work for just a couple of months ago, they had 20 development teams developing one system. That's pretty complex. And then we built software with people for people. And it's really hard to work with people. They're not rational, you know. And they all have different ways of thinking, different way of communicating, different languages. So it's really hard, and different ways of thinking. So we have to work together to understand other people. And then we have emotions. I'm pretty happy now because I'm on a stage and I'm talking to you guys. I'm really happy. And tonight I'm going to have more whiskey. Awesome. But maybe tomorrow morning, after all that whiskey, I'm not the same cheery person that I am right now. Or when you have just, I don't know, some bad luck in your life, it's harder to work with those people. So people are irrational and complex. And then there's this VUCA world out there. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And I put down some solutions, but still, it's full of risks. And how do you know about these risks if you don't do risk analysis? I think it's a good practice to create insight together in risk in your team, in the product, but also in the way you work. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right environments? Do we have the right data? Do we have the right tools? And then the last thing is that I wish we could all think of what we want up front, but we can't. Going back to my car, 1.5 years ago, I had to find a new car, and I walked into dealerships, and they have these all kinds of cool new features that I even didn't know about. And then I started researching electric cars, because this is my first electric car. And I learned so much about, oh wow, and the battery durability, and that it needs to warm up before you put a speed charger on it, stuff like that. That's interesting. So we don't really know what we want until we see it. And I see a lot of people, including myself sometimes, want to deliver a full product before somebody else gets to look at it. And I like to look at products that are even in your head. Just talk to me. You have an idea? I'll do risk analysis on it without even looking at the product. You tell me about the product. I will find risks. So you can think about, oh, how to mitigate those risks. Maybe we have to design it differently or whatever. And the development team can't imagine what customers actually do. Do you really talk to your end customers? I see some people say yes, but many people, well, I don't know, never seen them. This is a serious issue. How do you know what to build if you can't talk to these people? Relying on requirements made by some human, trying to put his or her thoughts into your head, I think that's risky. So we need to do research, building new insights, and do illusionary design. Agile is awesome in that. Small parts, fast feedback. So we have to learn and we have to deal with risks. So sometimes people ask me like, but what is the business case of testing? And I'd rather talk about the business case of learning. How do you learn? That's one of my favorite questions in a job interview. How do you learn? What do you do to keep up with the complexity in your team or in your work or in your life? So the question is, do you value learning? And if so, how much are you willing to pay? Training is expensive. But doing a training and then just go on doing the same shit as you did before is even more expensive because there's no value in your learning. Or try to live with it and with all the risks involved. So if you want to reduce the cost of software development or testing or learning, focus on learnability. So testability, and this is something teams really, really, really should focus on. How easy is it to learn or to test in a particular team, in a particular context? And there are many models that you could use. There's an awesome book by Ash Winter and Rob Meany talking about the 10 P's of testability. If you look at it, it's basically everything you do in your project. Or James Buck created the heuristic for software testability. Also an awesome source. And there's Maria Kidemo, who created her own model of things she knew. And these three sources really should or could inspire you to do more about testability, because knowing more about the product or doing better refinements or doing better unit testing improves testability. And there are many ways to do that. And should we automate everything? Well, I don't know. I think automated checks give you, they're like the dashboard lights in your car. As soon as they light up, you know something has changed in your car. You probably don't know what has changed, but you know there's a problem. There might be a problem. That's what regression checks do for you. They detect change. And as soon as something changed, there might be a problem. But, and of course, if you want to speed up development, we need a lot of those. They're awesome. Because it's very comforting to have a big set of unit regression tests, integration regression tests, acceptance regression tests, or whatever name you give them. So every time you do a pull request, or every time you push out a release, or you update an environment, you run these checks. And you see, hey, nothing has changed, so we're probably good. You can't know for sure, but you're probably good. So they're awesome, but these things don't learn. They don't tell you about new bugs. So you need people to provide you new insight in the product. And I think testing is pretty hard to do. Everybody can test. I'm sure about that, but do you want your testing to be good? In rapid software testing, we talk about testers and about helpers. So everybody who's not a professional tester or is not a trained tester could be a helper, and that's okay. We want people who take responsibility for the testing and know how to do it. And I think most people don't like testing, and that's why you probably will never be good at it. Not saying that, because I know a lot of developers who are awesome testers. And I know a couple of testers who are awesome developers as well. So we need smart people who can take a step back, some critical distance to do skilled testing. And we need to be able to answer the question, are there problems that threaten the value of the product, the on-time and successfully delivery of the product? And then, in the traditional definition of testing, are we still talking about that? Or is it way broader? I think it's way broader. And it's one of my goals today is to take away the myth that testing is only finding bugs. It's actually helping to deliver a better product, to create more insight in risks and in quality. So there are two mindsets, and I talked about this earlier. The opportunity mindset, people who solve problems, people who create innovation, developers, business analysts, product owners, who think of like, okay, this is a problem and this is how we're going to solve it. And they ask a lot of how and when questions. And it's cool. And then we have the other kind of people that are having this problem mindset, and it's a bit negative maybe, but they search for problems. And they ask a lot of what-if questions. And I think those are very important. So to have these people in your team, you're going to have two ways of looking at your solutions. How are we going to solve this, and what problems might it cause? And I think we need to create as many learning loops as possible. Plan, do, check, act. So team collaboration and skills to optimize your software development lifecycle and processes. Very important. But also looking at risks with the whole team. I like to work with risk analysis during refinements. They will just take your refinements a little bit deeper. They will just give you a little bit more insight in what the problems, the possible problems could be. Testing your requirements and assumptions. Helping the team go faster, or the programmers go faster, by having pipelines, by creating automated check, by looking at code quality, static code analysis, but also using useful metrics. If you want to improve something, find a metric that shows if you're actually improving. Don't start measuring stuff just because you can or your tool allows you to, because that will bring you a lot of data that you probably will find a lot of red herrings in there. And testing, good is good enough. And the only way to do that is to use risk analysis, or to look at what's important in our product, where are the risks, and how are we going to mitigate it. And I meet a lot of testers, and I do that sometimes too. That's why I need risk analysis. I like to be sure, because, hey, if something goes to production and there's a bug, they will look at me. So I will rather do more testing than that's actually necessary. And I do a lot of consulting, and in my last 2 projects, I actually talk to people. Like, okay, let's make a model, let's make a test strategy, and then talk to other people to see how good the test strategy is. And in one occasion, there was a girl named Claire. She made a regression set for like about 3 weeks of work. We talked to her product owner, and she said, well, it's all pretty important, but we want to release fast, and these parts are not that important, and we can lose that, and well, that hasn't been really touched, so we don't need that. And by the end of the day, we had 1 week of testing left. And I'm not saying that 3 weeks is better or 1 week is better, but aren't we testing too much? And testers tend sometimes to do that. So you want to have a discussion about what is good enough. Of course, you want to have strategies about what to automate and what not. And I like an integrated quality strategy. So are we going to do static code analysis? Are we going to use ReSharper? And how are we going to do it? What are we going to put in these static code checks? Stuff like that. Develop this with your whole team. Of course, use tooling and automation, and mitigate some of the risks, maybe by monitoring. You don't have to do a performance test if you can monitor it in production, if you have to know, if you have the right knowledge to deal with it fast. So this is Jerry Weinberg. One of the, he wrote many books, and he's one of the inspirers of rapid software testing. And he says, no matter how it looks, it's always a people problem. So let's look at system behavior. There's the system, so the teams, the way you work, managers, all part of how you are organized within your organization. And then there's behavior. And behavior determines the success of your system. And research shows that only 1/3 is influenced by the way you organize, and 2/3 is determined by how you actually behave. And the first time I saw this, I was shocked, because many Scrum Masters out there only focus on the process. And I think they rather should start coaching these teams on better behavior. So we need teams, organizations that learn better. Because improving is learning, right? So I've found some definitions that are not really, they don't really matter, but the thing that you want to take away from learning organizations is that there's efficient learning in there. People can actually take time, because learning is standing still and looking back. What did I do? Was it okay? What can I learn from that, right? That's what reflection is. And there are many characteristics, and I'm not going to go through it, but the top one is often the one that blocks learning. Senior management that keeps saying, yeah, we really value learning, but we have a deadline. So start building features instead of learning. And I think we, as developers or testers or whatever your role is, should take responsibility for our own learning. It takes time, so you don't do that on Friday between 4 and 5, I guess. It's something you really, well, focus on. Where am I? Where do I want to go? What's blocking me? What do I want to learn? And all these things really help, like a growth mindset. I have a fixed mindset if it comes to playing guitar. I don't know why. I just can't learn. I just get anxious when I grab a guitar. I don't know. I play trombone. I have the opposite. As soon as I grab my trombone, it's like, yes, let's do this. I can do this. And I don't know why. Something's blocking me. You need safety. You need people-oriented. Make it part of your way of working. Do retrospectives, even if you think you don't have something to talk about. Just pick a topic. Let's do a retrospective on, I don't know, testing, our pipelines, the way we walk around in the office. Can we make it more efficient? Open communication, etc., etc. But how do you build a learning organization? Well, again, there's the loops. You need to do something, look at it, find ways to improve it, and then start improving. And I like fact-based management, which is using actual data. So we need some metrics or measurements or to see, hey, we want to go to that side. Are we actually moving in that direction? So collect data and use that data. Do experimentation, because if you keep doing the same thing you always did, you'll probably end up with the same results you always had. Learn from past experience, look back. What can we learn from that? Learn from others. One of the things Michael told me when he came to the Netherlands to teach me and my team is, if you really want to be good at something, start observing others doing it and ask questions. So I walked around in the bank that I worked and I started asking testers like, hey, can I just observe you for a while and just see what you do? And can you explain what you're doing? I learned so much about how people think and how people actually do stuff. So I was way better in helping them improve by actually really knowing. That's what a coach does. A coach tries to analyze your thinking. The better he or she understands how you think, the better a coach is able to help you. So learn from others and transfer knowledge. And I see many teams never really do that. Well, yeah, we talk about it in refinements, but refinement is not transferring knowledge. It's delivering or designing a product. So continuous learning is, I think it's a given to improve, to be more effective, to be more efficient. And I think that's the key in agile organization. I think agile to me is being flexible, but also it's constant learning. Scrum is inspect and adapt, right? Learning about what our customers need, what the product actually is. You can have a set of requirements, but is that the product? Have you ever tried to model it in a different way? Do you use visual models to talk about your product? Or do you only look at fragmented user stories? How to work together, how to make technology work, how to keep up with constant change and whatever you want to get better at. So learning, first of all, is just showing up. And remember that I told you that learning needs you to stand still for a second. So if you want to learn, just go outside. If you don't smoke, take a walk. Just think for a while. Like, what am I doing? Where am I? Where do I want to go? Am I doing the right things? And if you don't know, ask other people. There are many people around you that can give you some feedback. It needs focus and attention and time. You want to learn something. You want to play or experiment with something. It's being not afraid to fail. And I think that's what's bothering me when I play in guitar. I'm really afraid to fail. So stop pointing to other people. And I call that learned helplessness. Yes, but... And then whatever comes behind the but is keeping you from learning. I don't have time. Well, you do. You work for 40 hours. Your manager will not look at you and say, hey, what did you do Friday between 1 and 2? He said, I was doing my work. And I think learning is part of it. And you need to do a lot of reflection. And if you don't know how to do it, you could look at one of my blog posts I wrote. So changing behavior is just doing it. It's not saying that you want to do it or that you're ready to do it. Just actually do it. And this is what I learned from one of my colleagues. We have experiences. Those experiences turn into beliefs. Those beliefs turns into our thoughts. And those thoughts bring us to certain behavior. And what we often do is try to convince other people to act differently. That's what politicians do all the time. They start debating, trying to convince others. I don't think that's really working. Because, hey, I'm a Feyenoord supporter. It's a Dutch soccer team. And probably a lot of people laugh at me like, but my mother was born right next to their stadium. So one of the first words I could say was the team name. So trying to convince me that I need to support another team will never, ever work. I'm just too convinced. And it's part of my beliefs. So, but you might want to lure me into experimenting. That's what somebody did from England and say, hey, have you ever looked at Liverpool? I was like, no, that's nice. And then one of the best players from my team moved to Liverpool, and I started supporting them, and now I'm a Liverpool supporter too. That could work, but you could try to convince me, but hey, I would never. So I learned to experiment, and I think that's what we need to do. So don't ask for permission, just do something different. Hey, are you okay that we do a little bit of risk analysis in our next refinement? I'll prepare it. If you're not okay with it, then we'll stop doing it, but let's try it a couple of times. So it's all about learning. It's all about people, and it's all about loops, creating loops everywhere. And then are we still talking about the traditional way we used to define testing? I don't know, but I don't think so. I think it's much broader. Thank you.